Welcome to Birds of a Feather. Today we're taking scraps of ceramic tile and we're turning it into a home decor piece for fall.
Color outside the lines.
What I'm using here is a compound tile cutter, and I really suggest that you do this into a box so that pieces don't go flying everywhere. Now, this particular tile is very thick, and it also has a thick ridge on the back, which I discovered is very difficult to cut. So if you can at all avoid it, you should just take a look at the back of your tile and make sure there's nothing impeding the cut. So I give it a try, and then I let my husband have a go at it, and even he was struggling because of that thicker ridge on the back. So here I'm showing you on a piece of a different tile, and it's quite easy. The only problem with this is that the pieces are big, and again, I do suggest you do this into an open box so that the piece cannot go flying like a projectile. Coming up in just a few seconds, I'm going to show you an example of a much thinner tile that's really easy to cut. It cuts like butter. Now, I don't have video of this, I'm just going to show you an example. Now, I did try also breaking the tile up with a hammer, but I found that it gave an unsatisfactory result. After cutting all your tile into smaller pieces, you're going to back butter each individual piece and then simply stick it onto a plastic pear, as you see here. This is it all done, and what I've done is I've stopped short of the bottom so that it stands. In this case, I'm going to be putting this pear onto a stand. It's not really necessary to do the bottom because you're not going to see it. Once all the ceramic is on the pear, I'm going to let it dry overnight. And then I'm going to mix up some grout and we're going to apply it. Check your packaging for ratio of water to powder. Here I'm just winging it. No matter what product you're using, be sure to add the water first and then add the powder. So I'm using a scoop so that I can get even measurements. I'm trying out 1 part water to 2 parts of powder, and as you'll see a bit later, I added a little bit more powder because it wasn't enough. Reading the package would have saved me a bit of time because it was clearly stated what the ratios were, which is great. Not all products do that because they're expecting you to mix up larger quantities for a tile floor. This is where I'm adding a little bit more powder to get the right consistency, and then I ended up using a bit too much, so I added in a little bit more water too. In the end, what you want is a consistency where when you hold your applicator upside down, it doesn't drip off. It should hold its own. After mixing, this is where you're going to test the consistency. It's a little bit drippy here, but I think that after waiting 10 minutes or so to let it slake, it's going to be perfectly fine. The mixing ratio of the water to grout is 2.5 parts powder to 1 part water, as I discovered. So you're going to let it sit for 10 minutes, and then you're going to give it another mix. And then we're going to proceed to grout. Now what I'm going to be using is this spatula just to spread it on, but this still has another 5 minutes to go, so we're going to let that sit and we'll be right back to grout. 10 minutes is up and I'm going to give this a stir. And I'm also going to put some gloves on. Let's get right into it. Now I can see that I'm going to need a lot more, so I'll just mix it as I need it. As you go, just push it right into all the nooks and crannies here. Make sure everything is filled. I'm being careful at the top here so that I don't get any grout on the stem. But if you do happen to get some on, you can just easily wipe it away. Don't worry too much about the top. We are going to come back and shape that later. As you get near to the bottom, it is going to get a little messier because you're going to have grout that's touching your table. So I do suggest you put a piece of plastic down to protect your work surface. Scrape as much off the surface as you can because that'll mean less cleanup later. As you can see, it's pretty messy once you get down to the bottom. Time to mix more grout to finish this part. Once everything is grouted, you're just going to go over it to make sure that you've got good contact with all of the nooks and crannies here and that everything is filled. And what you can do is just remove any excess, and that'll help with the next stage, which is cleaning. So once this is done, we're going to let it sit for 20 minutes, and then we're going to come in with a sponge. I'm going to try this kitchen sponge, but this is what an actual tile sponge looks like. Now that's a little bit too big for this little project here. It would actually be better to cut up this big one because the kitchen sponge does tend to shed. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take some water, and we're going to dip the sponge in the water and just clean off the haze. But we're going to let this sit for 20 minutes. When the 20 minutes is almost up, I'm just going to take a damp finger and just smooth around the top here. I'll let that set up, and then I'm also going to smooth around the middle, just a touch. But I'm going to let it set up just a little more. I'm also going to take just the edge of the spoon here just to smooth it out on the inside. I'll just continue going around. I have to get up close and personal with it, but you'll see the finished product. So it's now been 20 minutes and it's set up, and I've got a bucket of water beside me, and I'm just going to dip the sponge in. And I'm going to make sure there's like hardly any water left in it. It's just damp. So I'm just going to lightly wipe. And as you do that, you're going to keep rinsing. I'm going to keep rinsing the sponge and just come back in and just lightly wipe, and that will remove any excess off of the tile. So as you do that, you want to come in at cross angles. You don't want to be digging any of the grout out where you laid it. You're simply just wiping the haze off of the surface. Once you have wiped off all areas with the sponge, you're going to wait another 24 hours, and then you can come in with a white cotton cloth and you can remove any remaining haze. That will also polish it. Interested in more upcycle DIYs? Check out one of these unique projects.